Discover the incredible, heartwarming journey of the man whose unexpected death touched millions. In the heart of Maplewood, Jack Thompson lived a life filled with purpose and love. He wasn't just a mechanic, he was a father, a neighbor, a friend, a superhero without a cape. His smile, as warm as the summer sun, had a magical way of making everyone feel like they belonged. On any given evening, you could find him at the local veteran center, oil-stained hands deftly fixing bikes for kids racing in the fading light, or teaching them how to throw that perfect pitch. He had an uncanny knack for turning ordinary moments into extraordinary memories, filling them with laughter and warmth, but one fateful morning, tragedy struck. Jack's heart suddenly gave out, leaving the quaint town in shock. The news spread like wildfire, silencing the usual bustle of Maplewood with an eerie stillness. Families huddled together, grappling with the sharp pang of loss, for Jack had been a lifeline for so many. He held the community together like a sturdy frame holds a window, essential but often overlooked. As people gathered at his memorial service, the memories flowed like tears. The Davis family shared how Jack had helped repair their leaky roof during a storm, transforming their rainy day into a celebration of friendship. Stories of his quiet acts of kindness surfaced, the time he fixed a woman's flat tire late at night, or how he'd take the neighborhood kids to the park, coaching them in baseball without ever expecting anything in return. It was a flood of raw emotion, heartwarming yet heavy with the weight of unacknowledged grief. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Slowly, as the crowd listened and shared, an uncomfortable tension seeped in. Long-ignored issues began to bubble to the surface: economic disparities, silent struggles, and the frustration of feeling invisible in a small town that prided itself on community. Jack had been a bridge over these troubled waters, and now that bridge was gone, leaving wounded hearts as the raw honesty of past grievances emerged. What had been a night of mourning turned into unexpected catharsis, echoing with statements filled with truth and urgency. Then, just as the service reached its peak, two neighbors erupted outside the church. Their voices carried like thunder, heated words igniting a divide once held at bay. Each of them represented a different corner of the town, each had their own struggles and hopes. As people turned in shock, the scene played out like a movie, a tense moment where pain and purpose collided. How do they move forward while carrying the heavy burden of loss? What Jack would have wanted, if only he were still there, was clear to those who knew him best. The room held a collective breath, and the air crackled with possibility, leaving everyone on the edge of a decision. Would they lean into this moment of truth, or return to their complacent routines? As the echoes of past kindness faded, what lay ahead for Maplewood remained a poignant question, one that weighed heavy and sweet, just like their memories of Jack. As the final words of the eulogies lingered in the air, the silence was broken by soft sobs and the rustling of tissues. The townsfolk were still reeling, trying to process not only the loss of Jack but the torrent of emotions he had unintentionally unleashed. The old wooden church echoed their pain, hidden anxieties rising like steam from a pot left too long on the stove. Harriet, a longtime resident of Maplewood and a close friend of Jack's, found herself standing in the back, her hands clasped tightly. She had watched the unfolding scene, seeing anger in her neighbor's eyes where once there had been familiarity and warmth. It tore at her heart. In life, Jack had often stepped up to mediate disputes and bring people together, qualities that now felt painfully absent. As if sensing her turmoil, a quiet voice broke through the chaos. It belonged to David, a teenager who had grown up under Jack's wing. He stepped forward, clutching a baseball cap. Jack always said the best way to fix something is to start talking, he began, stealing glances at the crowd, gauging their reactions. I think we need to do that now. We owe it to him. His voice was shaky, but it carried a weight that struck a chord. The room stilled, pivoting on his words. Yeah. Come on, we can't let Jack's death mean we slip back into silence. Shouted Brenda, another neighborhood kid. She was barely 14, yet her conviction sent ripples through the crowd, energizing those present. It was a spark. Others began to share their thoughts, the dam of bottled frustrations bursting wide open. Mary, the owner of the local diner, stood up next. We can't keep pretending everything is fine. There are issues in this town we avoid because we don't want to rock the boat. Jack wouldn't have let that happen. Murmurings of agreement filled the air, a collective realization dawning within many. Several had stories of their own hardships, unspoken truths about job losses, families struggling to make ends meet, and the invisible lines drawn between neighbors. The community's heartache and unexpressed anger mixed together a bittersweet concoction, but amidst the emerging discussions, another storm loomed. Outside, the two neighbors who had argued earlier had taken their confrontation to the street. Voices raised, their dispute seemed to be dissolving into chaos, igniting old tensions too, revealing divisions that had simmered just beneath the surface. Harriet could feel the weight of history between them. As she stepped toward the door with determination, she called out, "Enough. Please." Her voice, though small, commanded silence like a sudden pause in a song. Everyone turned, expectant. "Jack taught us about community," she said, heart racing. "Let's honor him by lifting each other up, not tearing each other apart. Can we at least try and listen?" In that moment, a flicker of unity ignited behind her words. People began to nod, and reluctantly, some moved out of their comfort zones, stepping outside as though drawn like moths to a flame drawn to the messy, beautiful challenge of reconciliation. What would this discussion turn into? Would it lead Maplewood out of the shadows of grief and division? Or would it crumble under the weight of unaddressed fears? As a light breeze began to stir, a new chapter in the life of Maplewood awaited, bold yet uncertain, filled with potential for healing or conflict. Would they rise together as Jack would have wanted, or would they be swept back into silence once more? The unfolding dialogue hung in the air, suspended between possibility and despair. As the door swung open, a rush of cool air swept into the church, mingling with the warm emotions still thick in the room. Outside, Harriet caught sight of the two neighbors locked in a fierce argument, faces flushed with anger, fists clenched at their sides. It was as if the tension from the eulogies had spilled onto the street. "Listen," Harriet called, stepping down the creaky wooden steps. It was like stepping into a theater, eyes drawn in her direction. People from the church began to follow her, a small parade of hesitant souls gravitating toward the chaos outside. "Enough," she reiterated, this time louder, authority cracking the wavering nerves in her voice. Standing between the two feuding men, Frank, a widower with weathered hands, and Tim, a father of three, she felt a spark of courage. "We can't keep doing this. Jack didn't want us to fight." The crowd behind her grew, a symphony of quiet gasps and murmurs echoing the sentiment. They wanted resolution, healing, but was it too late? Would these powerful emotions rip their little town apart instead? "Oh, now you want to play peacemaker?" Frank scoffed. "This was about more than just Jack. It's about respect, about being seen." "Respect?" Tim shot back, his voice laced with disbelief. "What about my eviction notice? You could have done something, but you chose to stand by." Shattered faces among the bystanders tightened Harriet's chest. She felt their longing for unity like an invisible thread weaving through the crowd. "I get it, both of you. But if we allow our past grievances to bury us, we're dragging Jack's memory through the mud. Don't you see?" "That's right." David piped up from the crowd, eyes bright with indignation. "We all care about Jack. But we also care about each other. What would he want from us right now?" The vibrations of frustration pulsed through the gathering. It was a wave of emotion, crashing against the shores of old wounds. Encouraged by David's words, Brenda took a step forward too. This isn't just about you too. It's affecting all of us. We've been quiet about too much for too long. Harriet could see Frank's eyes soften, just a fraction, as if he was wrestling with demons that didn't want to let go. We can't just scream at each other, Tim admitted, his voice now tinged with weariness. But every day it feels like that's all we can do in that moment. The tension thickened, heavy but not unyielding. People shuffled, moving closer, the circle of unity forming around the malevolence and pain, the compassion and forgiveness hanging delicately in silence. As fear made way for a spark of hope, Harriet marched ahead, inspired. We've had too many funerals in Maplewood, it's time for a new beginning. Let us put the past behind us. What do you say? The neighbors exchanged glances filled with uncertainty, but a small flicker of agreement shone through. The gravity of the moment was palpable, a magnetic pull that could shift Maplewood's future. An overwhelming tide of emotions, nostalgia, regret, hope swirled around them, tangible and real. Harriet took a deep breath. Could they really turn it around? Did they have the strength to face their truths together? Then the unexpected happened. A low, rumbling laughter erupted from the back of the crowd. It wasn't mocking but a release, a conversion of emotions that could no longer hold back. It sparked another, and soon the sound of laughter wound through the air like ribbons, weaving through the heaviness. But amid the laughter, was there enough courage to confront the hidden hurt they had all carried for so long? The kind of talk that could tether their community back together? What would come next in their fight for unity would require more than words. It called for vulnerabilities, confessions, and perhaps healing they hadn't realized they needed all along. The laughter that erupted outside the church felt electric, charged with a mixture of relief and hesitation. Harriet took a step back, allowing herself to momentarily bask in the moment. It was like a release valve had been turned, letting out the pressure that had built up over years of resentment and unspoken words. But as the laughter faded, silence crept back over the crowd, slipping past the remnants of joy and leaving an unsettling weight. "Okay, that's a start," she said, trying to keep the momentum alive. She searched the faces around her, recognizing the multitude of emotions flickering in their eyes: confusion, hope, even a hint of fear. But we can't stop here. This is about more than just today, more than just laughter, right? Frank grumbled, his rough voice cutting through the tension. He crossed his arms, still standing rigid, his brow furrowed as if he were grappling with demons. What happens when the laughter dies down? When the day ends and the reality returns? The crowd shifted, murmurs of agreement stirring amongst them. Harriet felt herself wrestle with his words. "You're right, Frank. But what if today could be a turning point? If we face things now, together, we might just find something worth holding on to." Tim looked over at Frank, his expression softening. "Maybe we can start by talking? Not just arguing?" His voice held a hint of vulnerability, a trembling of raw emotion lingering just beneath the surface. "Talking can easily turn into another fight," Frank replied, the bitterness in his tone still evident. "But it doesn't have to," Tim shot back, taking a step closer. "We owe it to Jack and to ourselves to at least try." The crowd quieted, everyone leaning in, anticipation buzzing in the air. Pieces of their shared history began to float across the invisible divide, painful memories ready to be unearthed. Gratitude and regret mingled as Harriet saw the walls between them peeling back ever so slightly. Brenda took a deep breath and stepped forward too, her voice gentle yet steady. "We've all lost something. Jack brought us together, but we lost sight of one another along the way. We can't keep pretending we don't have issues. We need to face the truth." A few heads nodded, and Harriet felt a surge of hope wash over her. Perhaps if they started opening up, they could mend the fractures. She stepped further back to allow space for others to share. "We'd always rib Jack about his garden," David spoke up, a smile peeking through the remnants of his earlier frustration. "But he taught me so much about patience and growth. Every seed he planted had a story behind it, just like each of us does." That sparked others' memories, stories about Jack's unapologetic joy for life mixed with his stubborn quirks that made the little town feel alive. One by one, they shared their tales, each laughter bound with the ache for their losses, but also threaded with the love they felt for the man who had connected them all. As they spoke, Harriet felt a warmth begin to weave their hearts together, like a blanket being knitted with old, familiar yarn. The stories flowed, turning anger into shared nostalgia, tears into laughter, and hurt into healing in the face of overwhelming odds. Yet, just when it seemed they might be on the verge of a breakthrough, David glanced at the distance where the road met the edge of town, his face sobering. What if people don't want to change? What if we're just putting a bandage on old wounds? A collective pause fell over them, his words sinking in like stones thrown into still water, creating ripples that spread through the hearts of the crowd. Was the fight for unity truly a battle worth pursuing? Harriet's heart raced. What if change begins with us? She countered, her voice unwavering even as doubt clawed at her. What if this is just the first step toward something beautiful? But would they be willing to embark on that journey? As they regarded one another, weighing hope against hesitation, the question lingered in the air, waiting to be answered. The silence thickened, stretching between them like a taut wire, ready to snap under the weight of their unspoken fears. Harriet could see it in their eyes, the flicker of uncertainty mixed with a glimmer of hope. She wanted to force the light out of them, to break through the hesitation, but she knew it had to come from within. Maybe we can take a small step? Tim suggested, glancing at his friends, his hands slightly trembling. What if we shared just one thing we appreciate about Jack? The suggestion hovered in the air like an invitation to pull back curtains. Brenda was the first to speak again, her voice barely above a whisper. I cherished the way he always found laughter in the simplest things. He could turn a rainy day into an adventure with nothing but a pack of gum and a few grand tales. Nods spread around the small crowd. The weight softened just a little. Remember those Saturday BBQs? David added, a shadow of laughter touching his lips. Jack would burn the burgers, but hey, he said, it added flavor. A ripple of chuckles swelled and spread. As they continued sharing snippets of Jack's life, Harriet felt the tension start to thaw. Memories of warmth and laughter cascaded around her. Each story opened a door, revealing the intertwining paths of pain and joy they had all walked together, but had forgotten. Frank, standing a little apart from the group, seemed to be lost in his thoughts. Even when things got tough, Jack just kept planting those dang flowers. It was like he believed the world needed more color, he finally said, emotion reflecting in his weathered face. The honesty pulled at Harriet's heart. His belief in beauty, it was truly infectious, she replied. Beauty can't just cover up pain, Frank said softly, almost to himself. But it can help us endure it. The air shifted. Everyone felt it, the collective realization that pain and laughter could coexist, stitched together by shared experiences and connections. Harriet took a deep breath, feeling both lighter and heavier. Maybe it's true, she said, breaking the momentary pause. We can create change while acknowledging our past. We don't need to ignore the wounds, but find a way to embrace them. A murmur of agreement washed over the group. Harriet could see the barriers were lowering. The crowd felt more like a community now. Faces transformed from rigid lines into soft smiles reflecting each other's stories. Then David spoke again, his voice steady. I'd like to plant something in Jack's garden. Something that symbolizes this. The idea hung there, potent and full of promise. Everyone turned to look at the fragment of Jack's beloved garden visible beyond the church steps, its colors faded but still full of potential. Frank smiled, like a crack forming in a wall that had stood for too long. I reckon we could do that. Make a day of it, plant flowers together. We could probably make it a little festival celebrating Jack's spirit. Exactly. Harriet exclaimed, feeling hope bloom within her. This could be our way of honoring him while finding our way back to each other. We invite everyone, no one gets left out. As they began to speak over one another, ideas flowing about how to organize the event. Harriet noticed the spark in their eyes. They were beginning to dream collectively. But as the excitement grew, a figure appeared in the distance, a shadow in the shape of hope, yet also of uncertainty. It was Claire, Jack's younger sister. The tension in Harriet's chest flared. How would she fit into this new beginning? Would she embrace their shared journey, or would anger reignite old wounds? Harriet's heart drummed in her chest. Would Claire bring with her the potential for healing, or would she carry only grief? The atmosphere shifted again, anticipation rising, waiting for the next note in this symphony of emotions. The moment Claire stepped closer, the conversations hushed, her presence an unexpected jolt to the fragile sense of unity they had begun to build. Harriet could see the storm brewing in Claire's eyes. Her brow was knitted tightly, and her mouth pressed into a thin line. This wasn't just a casual observer, this was family, with emotions that ran deeper than most. "Hey, everyone," Claire's voice was steadier than Harriet expected, but it held a tremor of something suppressed. I heard you all talking about my brother." The group collectively shifted, a few people straightening as Claire's eyes scanned their faces, searching for a connection she hadn't felt since Jack's passing. Harriet felt an urge to bridge the gap, to pull Claire into their circle of remembrance, but the weight of sorrow hung heavy around her. "Jack always loved this place," Claire continued, the tension easing slightly in her shoulders as she found her footing. "He found magic even in a wilted flower. I think he would have loved the idea of creating a festival." Brenda stepped forward. "We're planning a planting day in his garden." A way she paused, gathering her words, a way to celebrate him, together. Claire's expression shifted. A flicker of confusion crossed her face, quickly masked by a well of deeper thoughts. "Together?" she echoed, almost to herself. "You think you can just come together like nothing happened?" It felt like a slap, though Harriet understood it was only the rawness of grief speaking. She took a breath, approaching Claire with care. "We're all hurting, Claire. We want to honor Jack and find a way back to one another. We want you to be a part of that." Claire's gaze softened, just a touch, but the hurt remained. "Do you even know what that means to me?" Her voice rose, emotion spilling over. "You all laughed and shared stories, but I'm just left with silence, and pain." "I can't imagine what you're going through," Harriet said softly. "But we want you to share your memories. We want you here, with us." The small group watched, breathless, as Claire's walls began to crack. "You don't know how hard it is to wake up and remember he's gone, and the world keeps turning. For everyone, except me." A tight knot formed in Harriet's throat. "But that's why we need each other. We're all lost, in some way. Maybe together, we can find a way through." Claire looked away, tears glimmering in her eyes but never falling. The air pulsed with unspoken words, heavy with shared sorrow yet ripe with the possibility of healing. Finally, Claire let out a shaky sigh, her posture softening. "I want to remember him. I just don't know how." "Then let us figure it out together," Frank chimed in gently. A flicker of hope danced at the corners of Claire's lips, though it was shielded by lingering sadness. "Okay," she whispered. "But you can't just sweep the pain aside. I need this to be real." As she spoke, Harriet felt the walls they had been building together begin to stabilize. Claire's presence could be the beacon leading them through the darkness, but only if they all let their emotions surface. The weight of anticipation settled once more as they all nodded in agreement, a silent pact woven from threads of hope, longing, and vulnerability. But Harriet was left wondering. What if Claire's pain was the key to unlocking deeper feelings and truths they hadn't yet faced? How far would they need to go to truly bring Jack's spirit to life amid their grief? The next chapter of their story was just beginning, with Claire's tentative acceptance of their shared journey hanging in the air like a delicate promise. Harriet felt a wave of relief wash over her as Claire breathed out her acceptance. Yet, the uncertainty lingered. They were stepping into uncharted territory, a territory painted with both grief and hope. She scanned the circle, noting the mix of apprehension and determination etched on everyone's faces. "Let us start with something simple," Brenda suggested, her voice steady despite the heartache that permeated the air. "Why don't we each share a favorite memory of Jack? Something that reminds us of who he was, who he still is in our hearts." Claire shifted slightly, searching the faces of the group as if drawing strength from their presence. The idea hung there, vulnerable and hopeful. Slowly, she nodded, though a flicker of hesitation danced in her eyes. "I can go first," Frank said, breaking the silence. "I remember the time Jack helped me fix my car. It was a wreck, barely running, and I felt so defeated. But he showed up with this toolbox and a smile, saying, 'Don't worry. We'll make it alive again.' Hours went by, and with his laughter echoing, somehow that piece of junk became something worth keeping." Frank chuckled softly, a memory mixed with warmth and a pinch of sorrow. They all smiled, the tension loosening as they began to relish the brightness Jack had brought into their lives. Next, Brenda found her voice. He had a knack for making everyone feel special. One year at the community potluck, he wore a ridiculous hat and cooked what he called mystery stew, never revealed the ingredients. But everyone loved it, and he just sat there grinning, soaking up the joy. It was like he breathed happiness into the air. Each story unfolded like petals in spring. Harriet could see Claire's defenses start to crumble, her shoulders relaxing and her eyes lighting up with each shared memory. Then it was Claire's turn. She swallowed hard, a mix of grief and nostalgia swirling within her. He was my anchor," she finally managed to say, her voice trembling. "Jack was my big brother, always protective, always teasing me. I don't remember a summer where we didn't build something together in the backyard, a treehouse or pretend rocket ship. But he never missed a chance to remind me, Claire, the sky's the limit." Tears brimmed in her eyes now. "I'm scared to face it if I can't ever hear him say that again." The group shared a collective inhale, the stark reality of their loss crashing against the tender memories like waves on a shore. Harriet reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Claire's arm. "We'll make sure he lives on through us. Just like this," she said, referring to their circle of stories. As the gathering continued, Claire joined in, sharing whimsical tales, slipping in soft laughter between the cracks of her pain. The air around them began to shimmer with a feeling that while their sorrow was profound, so was the love they held. But just as Claire seemed to embrace this moment of connection, a sudden chill echoed through the air, silencing the laughter. A shadow drifted across the group, and Audrey, who had been listening quietly, spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think Jack ever knew how much he meant to all of us?" Harriet felt a pang of vulnerability. They danced around the depths of their emotions, but this was a question that pierced deeper. "Do they really know what they mean to each other?" "Let us hope he did," Harriet replied slowly, heart beating fast. "But what if we never get the chance to tell him again? What if we have to live with that silence?" The weight of the question settled heavily, leaving Claire looking down, almost daunted by the gravity of their sharing. They had begun to break the silence, yet new truths waited just beneath the surface, threatening to unravel the quiet resolve they had momentarily built. Harriet felt the room inhale as uncertainty loomed once more. Would they venture deeper still? What buried truths would they discover in Jack's memory? The room held a weight unseen, a balance teetering between shared memories and unspoken fears. Harriet gazed at Claire, who appeared both lost and determined, as if at the edge of a pool, debating whether to dive into the depths. It was an unsettling yet strangely powerful moment, the kind where vulnerability could either shatter or strengthen bonds. "We have to let this out," Claire finally said, her voice steadying. "I think Jack would want us to be honest about our feelings." A murmur of agreement circled the group. What a striking thought that was, to think Jack wanted them to not just remember his memory, but to openly confront their own. "Then let us do it," Brenda said, the fierce glint of resolve shining in her eyes. "Let us not just share the good things. Jack wouldn't want us to hide from the bad either. The air thickened with anticipation, the tension swirling around them like a storm. Harriet took a deep breath, her heart racing, as she realized they were opening a door that might not be so easy to close again. Audrey spoke up next. I always felt inadequate around him. He had this way of making everyone else shine, and I often felt overshadowed. It's silly, really, but there were times when I wondered if I was good enough to be his friend. The revelation faltered in the air before sinking into silence, as if the group needed to absorb it before responding. Not silly at all, Frank said softly. He had that gift, didn't he? Making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. But that also meant we sometimes felt like we were losing ourselves around him. Encouraged, Brenda leaned in, vulnerability spilling over her words. I felt that way too. But I think he wanted us to be the best versions of ourselves. Maybe he never knew how to tell us that without projecting his own light, and it made us feel small in comparison. The confessions began to tumble forth, each one revealing a fracture, a hidden fear, a longing to be seen. However, amidst the confessions, something beautiful emerged, a collective understanding. They weren't just mourning Jack, they were confronting parts of themselves that had been covered in shadow. Harriet felt the knot in her stomach start to loosen, the warmth of connection igniting something deep within her. You know, Jack wouldn't want us to feel bad about ourselves. I can imagine him telling us that we are all strong, that we all shine, she offered, her voice gaining strength. Claire looked at her, and in that moment, a spark of understanding flickered back. Maybe in confronting these feelings, we can not just remember Jack but also celebrate how he brought us together, even in this pain. As each confession felt like a brick lifted from the burdened heart of the circle, Harriet sensed the changes swaying through each person. They were becoming lighter, braver. Yet, with each truth shared, Harriet couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play, something more profound than just shedding unworthiness. They were united not just in loss but in a transformative journey, just as Simon, generally quiet and shy, piped up with a crack in his voice. A heavy silence fell again. But what if in sharing these truths, we realize we still have things to say to Jack? Things left unresolved? The question hung heavy, and everyone's gaze shifted, a palpable realization crashing over them. Would they face the ghosts of their unshared words, the paths left unexplored? The ground beneath them felt shaky, like a bridge starting to tremble. Would they be brave enough to traverse into the tensions of their own hearts? Or would they carry those unspoken burdens, just like the silence that shadowed Jack's memory? As the group exchanged glances, Harriet wondered if they were ready, even willing, to dive deeper into the honest, raw truths they had kept at bay all this time. The silence cracked, a faint whisper of fear edging its way into the room. They all understood the stakes now. Each of them possessed a longing to be heard, to let go of the weight that Jack's passing had left behind. Slowly, that collective tension shifted to something else, an uncertainty that began to manifest. I have something I need to say. Claire broke the stillness, her voice softer now, yet imbued with an unmistakable strength. When Jack passed, I thought it was my fault. I wasn't there when he needed me. I never told him how much he meant to me. Tears shimmered in her eyes, reflecting her pain, her guilt. Harriet felt the sting of those words settle heavy in her heart. It was a feeling she didn't expect to see echoed amongst the others. One by one they began to nod, exchanging glances that mingled sadness with the spark of understanding. I had moments like that too, Audrey countered, her voice trembling. Moments where I hesitated to reach out, thinking it would be awkward or that he was too busy. I always thought I could tell him later, but later never came. Frank leaned forward, fists clenched on his knees. We were all guilty of waiting, weren't we? Holding back our truths, bottling them up, telling ourselves we had time. But now it feels too late, he admitted, his face flushed with emotion. That comment hung in the air, filled with sorrow, yet it catalyzed a sense of urgency. They were not just lamenting the past, they were finding their voices. Brenda wiped her eyes, determination swelling in her chest. It's not too late. Not if we speak up now. Not if we share what's on our hearts. We can honor him by being real with each other. Real. Right now. Something shifted. The space turned electric, charged with energy, a bond forged anew in the furnace of shared grief. Okay. Simon whispered, almost shyly, but there was a resolve in his voice too. I never told him how much I valued his friendship. I always felt like the sidekick, you know? I wanted to be braver, to take risks like he did. But when I finally found the courage, he was gone. Tears flowed freely now, softening their guarded hearts. Each confession dredged up memories tangled in longing, false assumptions and regrets that clung to them. Then, Harriet felt her heart pounding like thunder. The floodgates had opened. I once thought Jack was someone who didn't need my support because he seemed so strong, she stammered out, her voice trembling. But I should have seen that strength could mask vulnerability. He might needed me more than I realized. Her words seemed to awaken a deeper layer of emotion within the group. With every revelation, they were peeling back the layers of silence, and shadows fell away as light shone through. Claire's eyes glistened, her breath catching in newfound courage. Why don't we write him letters? Speak all the things we wished we could, Ve said. A hush fell momentarily, echoing the power of suggestion. Harriet felt the warmth blossom in her chest. A way to reconnect, to finally articulate the truths they feared sharing, to transform their grief into a heartfelt tribute. Yes, Brenda exclaimed, eyes wide. Letters. We can pour our hearts out. It will hurt, but it will heal too. As one by one they began to nod and murmur in agreement, Harriet felt the gravity of the moment swell to something monumental. In this small room, they were not just saying goodbye, they were forging a new path, making space to heal. But in her mind echoed a question: would the letters they crafted prove to be their final goodbye, or the beginning of a journey towards peace? As they gathered their pens, the mood felt cautiously optimistic, as if they were dancing on the edge of something powerful. Would this new path bring the closure they sought, or would it uncover even deeper wounds? What came next was uncertain. The sun peeked through the weathered windows of the church, casting a golden glow over the nave as the townsfolk gathered in a circle. It had been a week since Jack had passed, and now, as they prepared to write letters to him, the sense of urgency hung thick in the air. Harriet stood in the center, feeling both anxious and hopeful. Let us do this together, she encouraged. Let us pour out everything we didn't say. Hands trembled over stationery as words danced in the air like whispers. Claire took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unspilled tears. I should have told you I loved you, Jack. I should have told you every day, she wrote, the ink soaking in her sorrow. Others followed suit. David's letter unfolded like a story, detailing the lessons Jack taught him: how to ride a bike, how to stand tall in the face of adversity, and how to treasure every laugh. Each letter was a tribute, each stroke of the pen spun memories woven with grief. Outside, the world moved on as families passed by, unaware of the transformation taking place within the walls of the old church. But this moment, raw and vital, fortified their pen truths. The air shimmered with potential, turning grief into a shared tapestry of love and honesty. As the letters transformed into a collective outpouring, a transformation began to ripple among them. Some spoke of regret, wishing they had asked Jack for help or told him their fears. Frank's voice broke as he laid bare his struggles. I thought strength was just keeping quiet. I wish I'd told you about my loneliness, Jack. I thought I had to carry it myself. Around him, nods of understanding spread. The letters became a bridge, reconnecting hearts with words they had silenced for too long. There was a palpable energy in the room, an awakening. We're not just saying goodbye, Brenda said with fierce conviction. We're choosing to keep him alive in the way we honor each other moving forward. With hearts lighter yet still heavy, they finished their letters, folding them carefully as if cradling pieces of their shared soul. Harriet recalled Jack's garden, blooming even in his absence, and knew his spirit lingered there. The group exited the church together, letters clutched tightly in hands. They walked with purpose, a procession bound by love. Outside, the dwindling sunlight bathed Maplewood in warmth, a sign of hope breaking through sadness. Frank led the way to Jack's beloved garden, a patch of vibrant colors thriving among the weeds. "This is where we'll send our messages," he said. "To remind Jack that he was never alone, that we are here." As they gathered around the garden, recognizing its fragility and potential, Claire took center stage. "We should plant flowers," she suggested, the hint of a smile breaking through her somber expression. "Flowers to symbolize our thoughts, one for each letter." They nodded, diving into laughter and joy as hands dug dirt and seeds were sown. Together, they filled the garden with unforgettable blooms, each flower a word, a memory, a love letter sealed to the earth. As they worked, laughter spilled over. Joy bubbled amidst the community, dissolving the weight of their shared grief. "Look at us," Brenda said, breathless from laughter. Jack would have cracked a joke about this being the most mismatched garden in Maplewood. "She's right," David exclaimed, eyes gleaming, reflecting the radiance filling the air. "Let us promise to keep coming together to celebrate him and each other just like this." The idea wrapped around each heart like a warm embrace, pledges to unite for potlucks, barbecues, and even weekly gatherings at the park. Jack's legacy would guide them, fostering connections that had once felt lost. With their flowers planted and their letters set afloat on the edges of the garden, they stepped back to admire their work. Even as sadness danced with joy in their hearts, they felt Jack's spirit shining down upon them. Heartfelt whispers drifted in the air, as if the people of Maplewood had grown just a little bit stronger. They looked around, eyes lighting up with a collective understanding. Together, they would build a future that honored the past while embracing the present. A new chapter awaited the town, ignited by the warmth of community and the indelible memories of Jack Thompson. As they left the garden, promises echoed, weaving bonds that would be cherished and nurtured. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, but the light within Maplewood sparkled with newfound hope. Together, they would turn their grief into joy, ensuring that Jack's spirit would never fade away. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you felt the power of transformation and healing, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button right away to fuel the algorithm. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about this heartwarming conclusion, and don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this connection. Your support makes a real difference, and let us spread this message of unity and love.